Folks, I want to make a little video about my Golden Demon entries for 2022 at Adepticon. I know we've already passed the UK Golden Demon, and I'm talking about the Adepticon 2022 Golden Demon, so this video is a little late, but this is like the speed I operate. So I used to do posts about my projects on a metal-af.com blog, which I can link below, but I feel like it's all about that video life now. So before I talk about my Golden Demon entries, I just also want to mention Adepticon itself was really great. It was really great being back there after 3 years. I taught classes for the first time, and hopefully I'll be teaching the same classes next year in 2023. So I'm going to cover my 3 Golden Demon entries from oldest to newest. The Emperor I actually started sculpting back in 2019 with the intention of putting it in Golden Demon 2020. But before the con was even canceled, I knew that it wouldn't be done in time. So I just basically stopped working on it for like 2 years. If you look at an assembly whip, it kind of tells a story. You can see the lighter print resin is from the Photon that I was using back in 2019, and the darker resin is from the Frozen Sonic Mini 4K that I use now. So it actually has different pieces that were printed over multiple years. And you can see this picture that the tubes were plastic pieces that I added to the 3D print rather than sculpting. So you've got this Emperor project, scratch built, and you think this would be an absolute max effort project. But I did put a lot of effort into sculpting it in ZBrush, but at some point after I started painting it, I realized that in order to get it kind of to a winning level, that was just gonna be a ton of hours invested, and I didn't even know if they were interested in giving awards to something that was scratch built. I spent about 50 hours painting it, and I think in order to get it up to a refined, like kind of award-winning level, it probably would have required 250 hours of investment. So I think it's a fine project, and I think it's interesting in the sense that nobody's really ever seen a sculpted Emperor like this before, but it's clearly not an ultra polished project or anything like that. I did put some effort into refining the central focal point of it, like around the face and head torso areas. But as you go around to the edges where you're not really supposed to have the focus, you can start to see brush strokes and unrefined kind of areas. And so the project just kind of is what it is. A lot of people seem to really like it. I would say that more people came up to talking about the Emperor than any of the other projects that I had there. The second project I had was a Nurgle Marine. There's a little bit of a story behind this Marine. We had sold our house and we were moving into a new house, but the escrow situation didn't totally overlap, and I ended up having to live out of a hotel for about a month. And all my painting stuff ended up unexpectedly at the last minute boxed up, which was kind of a nightmare. So in order to have something to paint in this hotel room, I went down to my friendly local game store and I just bought a paint set. And I just kind of picked a model to paint on the spot. And that was good in the sense that I now had something to paint, but it was bad in the sense that I had zero plans, and it wasn't really something I was super motivated to paint. It was just kind of like the best thing I had to choose from. And also, ultimately, I don't think this model really suited my strengths at all. I did end up 3D sculpting and printing this base for him after the fact, after I was out of the hotel. And it's kind of like he's crowd surfing some tentacles on a piece of scrap metal, which is cool, but I do think this project fell a little short of the other two. My third entry was definitely the highest effort. If you've seen any of this stuff I've sculpted, it's all ladies in battle gear with crowns and stuff. So this is basically like in the style of something I would have sculpted myself, which is probably why I was like drawn to it. I think there's a lot of interesting things going on with this particular model that a lot of people at the con picked up on and were asking me about. So I'll kind of reduce it down to a bunch of kind of fun facts. Fun fact number 1, the story behind the base. The base that comes with the model is really cool, but I kind of wanted to extend it and make it taller, but still have it resemble or be reminiscent of the original base. And I wanted to kind of be accurate with that too, because the position of the legs is very specific, and I didn't want to have to invent something new. I just wanted to be like the exact same top of the original base, but be extended. So I did something kind of interesting. I scanned the original base with a technique called photogrammetry, which basically, if you're not familiar with it, involves taking several pictures of the thing that you want to scan from different angles. And it basically applies 3D tracking in order to kind of engineer how that model exists in three-dimensional space. And there's lots of tricks with photogrammetry. It really wants matte surfaces, not reflective surfaces, because the reflective surfaces create essentially false data points that mess with the tracking software. And it also wants a lot of high frequency detail, so it can use that to basically create tracking points that it can track across multiple photos. You can see in this video how it's kind of lined the cameras up as they exist in three-dimensional space. And the base itself looks kind of bonkers because it has all these tracking marks and high frequency detail I had to paint on in order to create good tracking points. I also had to cake it in matte finish. There's a whole process in order to get it very photographable. And you can see here the scan that I ended up with, which I had to clean up. And once the model was cleaned up, I was able to do the thing that I originally set out to do, which was to essentially extend it, which was actually relatively simple compared to the initial photogrammetry part. And then of course there was a lot of measurement and stuff to make sure that when I 3D printed it back out, it would be the correct size, because photogrammetry doesn't know actually how big things are, it just knows how they exist in three-dimensional space. So that was the whole process to create the base, and I probably would not do that again. I don't think it was actually worth it. I don't think the amount of time and effort that went to it really paid off when I could have just sculpted a base from scratch that may have looked cooler and would have taken less time. Fun fact number 2 about this model is that I attached a spear tip I got from the Marathi kit to the end of a metal rod, basically, and hollowed out the hand, and it's essentially a completely new weapon. And the streamers on it were another 3D sculpt that was also 3D printed. So I'm relatively happy with this project. It was a commended entry at Golden Demon, and after talking to the judges after the award ceremony, I found out the thing that basically got it eliminated from contention for an actual demon was the spear. I kind of Mickey Moused it together a little bit because the clamps on the streamers didn't print at exactly the right size. So I had to go in there with green stuff and kind of make it all work together. And at the end of the day, it didn't look awful or bad or anything, but compared to the sharpness of the 3D printed elements and compared to Games Workshop produced stuff, that whole area was a little bit of a soft sculpt. So in order to draw your eye away from it, I deliberately painted it darker than everything else. So when your eyes are going over the piece, you don't really look there, which is fine because you're not supposed to look there anyway because there's nothing particularly interesting going on in that area. But the issue is that within the Games Workshop / Golden Demon rubric of how to paint things correctly, everything is supposed to have equal highlights, which we can segue this video into a little bit of Golden Demon criticism because they say that they accept all styles of painting, which is a lot of people are kind of parroting lately. And that's true, but even within your preferred style of painting, you still have to follow very specific rules and guidelines / rubric that they have. And one of those things seems to be that they want all surfaces highlighted up to the same level, which in itself is a kind of style rule. And a lot of people are really drinking the Kool-Aid on this, saying you can have any style, but you can't really, because you still have to follow their guidelines or their rules. So, I mean, this isn't a complaint so much as it's just kind of the truth. So you don't have to paint heavy metal style, which I don't think has been true in years, but you do have to follow some kind of arbitrary heavy metal based rules. So I actually think it's a little more nuanced than the way that a lot of people are talking about it. Okay, so the third fun fact about this miniature is a story behind the blood effect. The blood effect at the end of the day is actually pretty simple. It's a blood splash that was 3D sculpted and then printed with clear resin. And then after being 3D printed, it was extended a little bit at the top. That kind of like little bubble that's coming off the very top is fishing line plus some clear water effects gel. And the whole thing was painted with clear Tamiya red in order to keep it kind of semi-transparent. And so it's actually not that complicated. I guess the only funny story behind it is that I actually printed 10 of the splashes. It was a preventive measure because I knew there was going to be issues with losing it because it's so small and clear, and that 100% did happen. I think of the 10 I printed, I outright lost 6 of them in the alcohol. Like, I just lost track of them. And then of the 4 remaining, 3 of them had issues like pieces of it broke or whatever. So it was actually only left with 1 good one. So it was actually probably a good thing that I printed 10 of them. So like I said, I'm relatively happy with this miniature. I think it looks pretty cool. I think it's a definite improvement on the original miniature in the sense that it takes the original miniature and makes it way more interesting and kind of epic looking. I guess the only sad thing about this miniature is I feel like because of the Golden Demon judging rubric, I think that if I had just not done the whole spear project, as in no streamers, no Marathi spear tip, if I had just kept it at the stock spear that it came with, I actually think I would have had a much better shot at winning a demon because the whole issue with the join on the spear would have just gone away completely. So it's kind of speaking to this reality of the Golden Demons where they penalize mistakes more than they reward creativity. I think you could have the most interesting, mind-blowing creative project in the world, but if you make a technical error that they can identify, you basically totally torpedo your chances. Which again, I'm not saying this to complain about the competition so much as to talk about the reality of how it works. Especially after this latest UK edition, where a lot of people, their takeaway from it has been, oh, you can be super creative, you can do whatever you want, which I think is true. But again, I don't think they're really rewarding creativity. I think it just happened to be that the creative projects also happen to not have any technical errors. And another problem I think that this project ran into at the Golden Demon, and Richard Gray mentioned something similar in his video, is that some painters, and myself included, really paint for a hero angle at the expense of other tangential angles. And that's something I did here as well, but I don't think that the Golden Demon rubric likes this at all. I think that they want all the angles to be equally good or bad. And I see painting for that hero angle as part of my personal style. So again, I think this is an example of not all styles really working for them. I think for the future, this has definitely affected how I think about Golden Demon competitions and entering them. This miniature specifically was me trying to play by the rules and still make something interesting. But at the end of the day, I think for future entries, it's going to be more polarized in the sense that an entry will either have zero ambition and just be essentially a high technical quality stock model paint where I don't give myself the opportunity to make any conversion mistakes, or it'll be the other extreme where it'll be ultra ambitious, but I won't really try so hard to make it something that's actually winnable. Like it's just a super interesting, ambitious project and hopefully people like it, but I'm not going to be thinking about, oh, what do I need to do to win? I'll just accept that it's not going to. So it's kind of like creating these 2 lanes where lane A is like, this is a project that I think could win a demon, and lane B is like, this is just a very interesting project, and I don't care if it wins a demon. I'm not implying that the Golden Demon should change for me or change for anyone else, but if I want to enter the Golden Demon and be successful, I do have to change for the Golden Demon. And with the Crystal Brush gone, you know, it's kind of the only game in town at Adepticon. I mean, there's also the Resin Beast, and some other things, but clearly Golden Demon is the main spectacle. So for me, if I'm going to Adepticon, I'm definitely entering the Golden Demon. And I'm recording this halfway between 2022 Adepticon and 2023 Adepticon, so this is just as much a review of my 2022 projects as it is me kind of thinking about 2023. Anyway, that was the main point of the video, was to kind of review my Golden Demon projects and have some thoughts about Golden Demon going forward. I am feeling very positive about Golden Demon 2023 after seeing the results of the UK 2022. The results do show us that if you paint something creative, also very technical and well, that you can still win, which I think is good news for everyone. So that's pretty much all I have to say, but before I go, I do want to thank the people that helped me along the way with all these projects, which is probably too many people to thank, but the biggest thanks definitely to Aaron Lovejoy, Ben Comets, and Richard Gray for the feedback, and to Vinny V for being the ultimate Games Workshop lore master. So if you like this video as a replacement for how I used to do the blog, let me know. Let me know if this was like interesting or garbage, and either one is totally fine. There probably won't be another one of these videos until after Adepticon 2023, so I will see you guys then.